Okay, we're back for live. It's Monday, Liz.
Yes, it's Monday. It's
That's-
always a good day.
It's Liz Shue from the Department of Agriculture, my co-host in Agritech in the Islands. I'm Jay Fidell, and we're talking to Jim Wyban. Did I get that right? Wyban.
Yes.
Who is a shrimp breeding technologist in Hilo, who joins us by Skype. Let's take a quick hello for Jim. Jim, you there?
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah.
Aloha to you. We're going to talk about Hawaii's shrimp breeding industry today as part of our examination of Agritech in the Islands with Jim Wyban. And we're looking forward to that because we know how important shrimp is and how valuable it is on the world markets. And we need to be able to export it. So, Jim, what is this with you and shrimp? What's going on?
Well, you know, there's a couple things about shrimp. Most of the shrimp that we love to eat in the United States is imported, like more than 90%. Okay, and those imports now are running about $5 to $6 billion a year in imports. Most of the shrimp that is imported comes from shrimp farming in South America and Asia. And everybody loves to eat shrimp, but what's little known is that the genetics of most of the farmed shrimp from around the world starts in Hawaii.
Yes, I remember, forgive me if I'm dated on this, but I remember Oceanic Institute was creating these high-quality shrimp broodstocks and selling them to Thailand, I think, and other places in Southeast Asia. And they were, the broodstock for the best shrimp in the world and most attractive product from Hawaii. Everybody wondered why Hawaii wasn't doing more of that, actually. But I wonder where you step into that, into my recollection, if you will, Jim.
Okay, I'll take you back in history a little bit. I started working at Oceanic Institute.
That all makes sense.
In the mid-'80s, and we had a large USDA-sponsored grant that I was hired to manage to assist in the development of a U.S. shrimp farming industry. Because so much money was being spent on shrimp imports, it was reasoned that we could offset that by starting a shrimp farming industry here in the States. So as part of our startup of that program, we went out and interviewed shrimp farmers around the United States to find out what kind of problems they were having so that our research program could be geared towards or targeting solutions to their real problems. And what we found as a consistent problem was that they were having diseases, a variety of diseases were impacting them, so that the production process was kind of unreliable. And when you have an unreliable production process, the economics of it become squirrely, and it's hard to get investment in that kind of industry.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, well, why don't we try to solve these disease problems? And we went out and looked at some of the existing animal production industries like chickens, pigs, cattle, and they had solved these kinds of problems.
What kinds of problems are you talking about?
Well, specifically diseases that were impacting the shrimp in production, things that like viruses that would actually kill the shrimp. There were some viruses that would stunt their growth. And these things were making the process of farming shrimp in the United States uneconomic.
Mm-hmm.
So as researchers trying to help this industry grow, we wanted to help solve that problem. And when we looked at other animal production systems, they had solved those kinds of problems by developing domesticated and disease-free animals. Pigs, chickens, cattle, they all had that. And so we said, oh, that's a good idea. Why don't we copy what they've done successfully and develop a disease-free shrimp? So that's what we did, and I was in charge of that. And in 1990, we actually produced our very first disease-free shrimp. We call them SPF, which is an acronym for specific pathogen-free. And that was the beginning of that process.
I thought SPF had something to do with suntan lotions.
Yeah, well, acronyms are a lot of things, but this one is about disease-free shrimp. Right?
Okay. Well, so let me go back a second, though. Why you? Are you qualified? What is your training that makes you a disease-free person?
Well, I earned my PhD at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, in zoology, working on developmental genetics of fish. So I have a background in genetics in aquatic animals, fish in particular. So that was the first step. But after I finished my PhD, my wife got pregnant. This was in the final months of my PhD program at Manoa. My wife got pregnant, and we were going to move to the mainland for me to pursue an academic career. And when she got pregnant, we had agreed earlier on that we were going to raise our kids in Hawaii, because Hawaii is the most beautiful place on the planet, and this is the place children should grow up, especially Hapahawi kids like my sons. So that required me to change course. So what I did as I reached the end of my PhD program at Manoa, I ran a classified ad in the newspaper, in the Honolulu newspaper, that said, PhD with family seeks aquaculture opportunity.
That's wonderful.
And this character who's somewhat notorious in Honolulu, he's not around here anymore, he went back to the mainland, but this fellow, Lee Martin, who was involved in Sea Flight and Aloha Tower and a bunch of stuff. Anyways, he had this lease on this property on the North Shore in Haleiwa, a place called Loko'ea Fish Pond. And it's out there, it's a fish pond right next to Jameson's by the Sea in Haleiwa. And it was just sitting idle, and he saw my ad in the newspaper and called me up and said, Jim, come see this place that we have, and we need somebody that's going to revitalize this and make it into a active fish pond again. So we went out there and visited it, and it was amazing. You know, this is like a window into old Hawaiian times, right? So we worked out a deal with Lee Martin and took over the fish pond in Haleiwa. And so me, with my PhD in genetics, I'm starting to schlep around fish and fish feed and stuff like that. And over a couple years of doing that, I really learned about the basics of the business, doing business in the fish farming industry. And then I was invited to sit on this aquaculture development committee that the Governor Ariyoshi organized. And we were tasked, this committee, to identify what are the constraints and opportunities for aquaculture in Hawaii. And so I think I had a lot of opinions and talked a lot during these committee meetings. And at the time, the chairman of that committee was this fellow, Bill Rowland, who was the president of Oceanic Institute at the time. And by the end of these committee meetings, Bill said, hey, you should come over to OI and talk to me some more. And so I went and visited him one day, you know, put on long pants and went and visited him. And they had just received notification from USDA that they were going to get this big grant to help the U.S. shrimp industry. And they really didn't know what they were going to do with this, you know, but it was quite a big multi-million-dollar grant. And Bill said, what do you think about coming to work for us and manage this research program? Because he liked me because I had a lot of ideas. I had a couple years of practical experience managing my fish farm, and I had a PhD. So I had kind of the whole package. And so we worked out a deal. I agreed to do it. And then I went to work for him at OI, managing this big program. And it was in managing that program and trying to solve the problems of disease for the shrimp farmers that we then came up with this idea of SPF shrimp. But a little wrinkle in there, what even better qualified me for eventually what I did, was that while I was still at my farm in Haleiwa, one of our best business activities there was selling broodstock fish to Oceanic Institute. We were selling them mullet and milkfish broodstock for them to use in their breeding programs. And after doing that a little bit and getting like $100 a fish instead of $3 a pound, a light went on for me. This broodstock thing is really something to pursue.
It's big. It's big.
Yeah,
So maybe you would take a moment and tell our audience exactly what a broodstock is. I don't think people in general know what it is.
Okay, yeah. Broodstock are the breeding parents, the adults that animal production people use to make babies. So they're like the analogy of the prize bull in a cattle breeding program. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we've done in shrimp, and as I mentioned, we did that earlier with fish too. But we would produce these animals that are, when we sell our broodstock shrimp, these animals are ready to reproduce. So they can make babies, and they actually make millions of babies from a single pair.
Yeah, I remember when I knew about this last, I knew that a broodstock, a given single shrimp, would cost $50 or more, and this broodstock would be shipped to a place where there were shrimp farms, and
yes.
It would generate thousands, millions of shrimp.
Yes.
But it would last only so long.
Right.
And after that time, the farmer had to order more because the purity of the broodstock only was limited in some way. And we're
right.
going to take a break now, Jim. But when we come back, I would like you to talk about that. About exactly what benefit a broodstock provides to a farmer, how long that lasts, how it is critical for that shrimp farmer's operation. That's
okay.
Jim Wyban. He's a shrimp breeding technologist. He joins us from Hilo by Skype, and I'm here with Liz Shue, and we're talking about agritech in the islands, namely about Hawaii shrimp breeding and the industry that is growing up around it. We are so excited to learn about this. We'll be right back after this very short break.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. It's Monday. I can't believe it's Monday. I'm here with Liz Shue, my co-host here on Agritech in the Islands. And we're hooked up with Jim Wyban, who is a shrimp breeding technologist in Hilo. And we're going to learn everything we can from him about shrimp breeding and the shrimp breeding industry in Hawaii. So, Jim, to continue our discussion from before the break, so what is the nature? I mean, how does this broodstock, which I expect costs more than $50 these days, I think you made some reference to $100 even, for one shrimp, and it's a big shrimp. It's like 6-7 inches long, maybe more.
Yes.
And it gives rise. It's the parent of tons and tons of shrimp, and they're all healthy shrimp. That's really worth some money. How does that work?
Yes. Well, the shrimp broodstocks start here in Hawaii, and within the shrimp breeding company, we have to reproduce them every generation, make babies, and grow them up to an adult size. And then at the adult size, we sell them to our customers, and during the time I had my business, we sold shrimp broodstock into 26 different countries around the world. And each individual pair, you know, you have a male shrimp and a female shrimp, they have to mate in order to get fertilized eggs.
Just remember, this is a family show, Jim.
Yes. So the mating of the pair, the male and the female coming together, will then generate approximately 1 million babies over about a 3 or 4 month period where they're reproductively successful. They run out of gas eventually and then expire. They die. Mm-hmm. But they're good for about 3 or 4 months, and on average, a farmer will get about 1 million babies from one pair of these shrimp.
So when the farmer takes the broodstock shrimp, the two of them, does he have to put them in a confined area, in a special dedicated area for breeding, a tank or something, and then they spawn the eggs, and then he takes the eggs out of the tank and puts them in another tank? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's a specialized facility that we call a hatchery. And the first stage is they put the broodstock into some tanks where the males are in one tank and the females are in the other tank. And in those tanks, they're very carefully controlled for temperature, water quality, photo period, the diet that they feed them. Everything has to be exactly right. But if it's done right, then periodically the females will become mature, and that means that their ovary is fully developed and she's ready to spawn. At that moment, which can be visualized by the technician, they grab those females that are ready to spawn, they take them out of the female tank and put them over there with a gang of males. The males will mate with that female, and then the technicians have to go and catch her within an hour or two after she's been mated. Then she will be taken to another specialized place and put into what's called a spawning tank, where the water is very, very clean and perfectly balanced chemistry. That night she will spawn her eggs in that tank. In the morning, the technicians will remove the mother, the female, put her back in her tank, and now they'll have those fertilized eggs in that specialized tank, in that spawning tank.
And then the spawning tank you give it special nutrients and all those little cakey grow up.
Well, no, not yet, because in this spawning tank, the key to that one is that it's very low light and it's very, very clean water. It's seawater, but if it were fresh water, you could drink it. It's that clean. It's very, very clean water. So then the eggs will hatch into baby larval shrimp, first stage. And then at that stage, then they catch those animals, and then they get moved into another room, into other tanks. And there in those other tanks, what are called larval rearing, the baby shrimp then start to grow. And in those larval rearing tanks, they have to feed them the exactly right feed for which stage they reach. And finally, after about 3 weeks, they have baby shrimp that are essentially miniature adults. They look just like an adult shrimp, only they're quite tiny, you know, 1/8 of an inch in length. And those ones then are ready to take outside and put into ponds, or in the case of a big industry like Thailand or China, they would sell them to some other guy who has...
Well, a couple of questions about that. It sounds pretty nerve-wracking, because you have this valuable shrimp that was flown in at some expense from Hawaii, from Oceanic Institute or wherever, and this is your harvest now, and your whole business depends on doing it right with these shrimps. You got 2 of them, maybe more, but basically 2 of them, male and female, and everything has got to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, you've just wasted your money.
Yes.
And so how do you train these farmers, say in Thailand or anywhere else, to do it with the exact right, balance in the water, the exact right temperature, the exact right conditions and timing? It sounds like you need to stand and watch it for days, or you blow your harvest. How do you teach them that?
Well, it requires that there be a technical manager for that facility. And like I said, the hatchery company, those are usually separate companies from the farming aspect. And they have a technical manager who has a lot of experience in this area. But you're exactly right. The specifications, the precision are crucial, and it really requires a pretty technological approach to producing these baby shrimp. I would say, an analogy might be in other parts of agriculture. They do reproduction of like orchids and things like that using tissue culture, or in brewing beer. There's something that's highly precise biological process. It's similar to that.
Do you go out and sort of fly with the shrimp? That could be the title of our next show, Flying with the Shrimp.
Fly me to shrimp.
And
yeah.
like accompany the shrimp on the trip, make sure that they're safe and healthy while they're in the plane. Transfer them in an igloo or whatever you use.
Actually, yeah, we have some guys who specialize in that.
Is that right?
Yes.
Moving shrimp,
Yes,
flying with the shrimp.
Freight forwarders, yeah. We do have some guys.
Yeah,
for
freight
that.
forwarders.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I sold my breeding company in 2012 to a Asian multinational, and now my business is I do that type of consulting where I go out to the shrimp industry and advise people on the process of the technology, particularly in the breeding and the hatchery stage.
Oh, that's
how to
great.
do better.
Yeah, we definitely need more experts like you for the state, because we want to grow a super intensive shrimp farming industry. And one of the challenges farmers have, there are not enough experts in Hawaii.
Right.
The older ones, they're long gone, so we don't have many choices here. So I will certainly pass your information around to potential farmers so they can go to you for advice.
Well, let's talk about Hawaii. I've been focusing at my own recollection in Southeast Asia. But I think what I get from both of you guys is that there are shrimp farmers here in Hawaii, and you supply the shrimp farmers with the broodstock, and they are growing shrimp just like in Thailand. Am I right about that?
Well, actually, Hawaii's shrimp industry is pretty small, pretty minuscule. There's a good-sized shrimp farm over on Kauai, and they are producing Kauai shrimp out on the west side of Kauai. And those guys are doing a really good job. And then there's a shrimp farm over on Molokai Shrimp Farm, and they're doing a nice job too. And both those groups actually have quite a bit of technical expertise within the company to be able to do their shrimp farming. But by far, the vast majority of the shrimp that we eat in Hawaii, in the restaurants all around town, are imported. Those are all imported products. Very little production occurs here in the islands.
Okay, from your point of view, Jim, from your point of view, as a breeding technologist, somebody who's watched all the steps of development and farming, is it, and from your point of view too, Liz, as a principal of the Department of Agriculture, can we have a robust shrimp farming industry? And if so, what's holding us back? Thoughts?
Yes, I think we can. An obstacle for Hawaii, well, there's a couple. If you want my opinion on that, there's a couple big obstacles. One is Hawaii is a very expensive place to do business. In addition to having we have very high electrical charges, the land charges are expensive, labor costs are high, all of the overhead on top of the labor is expensive. So when you add all those things up, if you're trying to produce a food item, you have a tough time. When I was producing broodstock that we sold for $100 a pair, it was okay. We could make a good profit on that when you're selling them per piece. But when you're selling shrimp for $10 a pound or $12 a pound or whatever, it's a tough business. But there are ways that some of those costs could be reduced. I think if there was some of the landowners, perhaps Kamehameha Schools or somebody wanted to encourage the farming of shrimp, there are ways that they could cut those costs. You know, subsidized power, cheap leases. It could be done.
So incentives of one kind or another, yeah. Now, but now let me put it in a competitive crucible. So here we have incentives in Hawaii. We give them cheap land. We give them tax incentives. We give them help. We give them extension. Department of Agriculture helps them in every way it can. So now we're growing shrimp here at a relatively a cheaper price than we were before because of these incentives. Could those farmers export and compete with shrimp farmers on the mainland? Or would they be behind the curve because those expenses are so much lower on the mainland?
Well, I would say you're not going to compete head to head with mainland farmers. What I would say is that the Hawaii brand is incredibly valuable. Around the world, people think of Hawaii as this pristine, beautiful, tropical location. And so, shrimp produced in Hawaii, if they're marketed properly, exploiting the Hawaii brand, there's good potential. The Kauai shrimp farm is sending a lot of shrimp up to Japan. You know, in Japan, they love seafood, they love Hawaii, and they will pay a premium for that Hawaii-produced product. Now, you're talking about a niche, but if we could do 1 million pounds a year, what is a niche in a global commodity might be a very significant industry here in Hawaii.
And I think that shrimp that come from Hawaii have a special aloha. But let's get to that after the break. I'm Jay Fidell. This is Agritech in the Islands. My co-host is Liz Shue from the Department of Agriculture. And we have on Skype from the Big Island, Jim Wyban, who is a shrimp breeding technologist. And we're talking about the shrimp breeding industry here. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on the ThinkTech Digital Series. The show is every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I want you to watch this show because I think that when we talk with artists on the show about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, why they do it, I believe that it resonates within each of us and we find something inside of ourselves that brings us closer to all of humanity. That's what arts are there to do, and that's what I'm here to do on this show. That's Center Stage. It's on every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. I hope to see you there.
Okay, we're back. We're live. Okay. We're here talking about Agritech in the Islands with Liz Shue, my co-host from the Department of Agriculture, and Jim Wyban, an old-time, may I say that, an old-time shrimp breeding technologist person who is on Skype in Hilo. And we're trying to examine, you know, how you do this, because we want people to do this.
Yes.
Right, Liz?
Yes, we want a lot more farmers, shrimp farmers.
So how do you, Liz, how do you see it from, you know, the policy point of view? Is this a thread of agriculture or aquaculture, if you will, that could make Hawaii some real money?
Yes, I believe so. Just like what Jim mentioned, this is a $5 or $6 billion industry for the whole USA. Actually, there are not many shrimp farmers in mainland USA as well. They're wild-caught shrimps. Overall, for the country, we need to grow this industry to replace imports, to give our workers more opportunities. And it can be really profitable if this super intensive shrimp farming technology does work in commercial environment. It works in the lab environment. That's something we will explore in the next 2 years and want to bring the technology to Hawaii.
We want that.
Yes.
We want that. We can do it. And, you know, now let me ask you another question about the possibilities. Do we have the people here who would be willing to do it, who have sufficient training to do it, aside from the land, right, and the technology, but do we have a workforce that would make this happen?
As far as I know, we have a very limited number of experts. Jim is one of them. I know a couple more. That's about it. And but who are willing to do this? I know one or two farmers who are very into this, who want to build a pilot project. So when they achieve success, I hope more people will follow because it is a complicated process. You need a really good expert like Jim, maybe David sorry, I forgot his last name. So we need their help to make sure these babies will survive and then grow into healthy big shrimp for harvest. So it's not something anybody can try. It requires a lot of patience, money, and determination to be successful in this field. We hope we have some model projects and then more people will join.
You know, one thing that Jim said that clicks for me is this. Back about 10 years ago in NELHA, the Hawaii, Natural Energy Laboratory Authority.
Hawaii Authority.
They found that they could get deep sea water out of their deep sea OTEC pipe, and then they would be able to distill that into fresh water and sell it. And they put the Hawaii label on there. It was Hawaii water or something. And the state of Hawaii charged royalties to these companies who were selling to Japan all this deep sea water that came out of that pipe. And actually, I'm sure that this arrangement exists till today. So what's happening is that the deep sea waters are paying for the water, they're putting their label on it, they are including a Hawaii label on it, and they are paying royalties to the state of Hawaii, when they sell it in Japan. Now, suppose I turned that around a little and said, these are pathogen-free shrimp. They're as clean as the day is long. They will taste great. Whatever sauce you like, they will taste great. And they're going to command an additional price in the market. And therefore, we're going to charge you for a given broodstock. We're going to charge you a premium for that, or for that matter, for a produced shrimp that is grown in the ponds of Hawaii's oceans. We're going to charge additional price for that and put it right on there, and the state gets a royalty. Everybody is. What do you think?
With this one, with the commercial shrimp for food shrimp, we don't have to charge royalty. We don't have to do that, and this branding would be so easy with the Hawaii's name on it. So I think this is the advantage of doing a shrimp farm in Hawaii, in compensation for the high energy cost we have. I think that's great potential for Hawaii farmers.
Okay, can they get rich, Jim? Can a shrimp farmer in Hawaii get rich?
Well, I don't want to specifically comment on that, but I will say that the shrimp broodstock industry now is 2013 revenues were over $20 million. And in Hawaii, 20 million, it depends on who you're talking to, that's some significant money being made. And that's just the broodstock. That has nothing to do with the food shrimp industry. And there's a lot of room for that industry to grow because as new diseases continue to crop up in the industry, the clean SPF shrimp from Hawaii is the only thing in the whole industry that people can count on, that these animals are absolutely clean and you're starting off with a clean animal. Because out in the industry, there's so much contamination, water quality, the environment is contaminated, there's shrimp diseases everywhere, and Hawaii's SPF broodstock is a known gold standard product. And so this industry is going to grow some more, and $20 million, it puts it at about the third or fourth place in total agriculture value, annual value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim, do you worry about that, though? I mean, so if I sell my broodstock to Thailand, they're only going to last so long before the shrimp diseases get to the product, and I have to go back to Oceanic or somebody, for more, broodstock that's clean. But here we are, and I'm sure you've thought about this, here we are in the land of climate change, where the temperature in the ocean is increasing. The biological mix in the ocean is increasing. Are we going to be able to retain that purity going forward? You mentioned that new diseases are, coming up all the time.
Yes.
Are we going to be able to stem the tide? Ooh, what a terrible metaphor. Are we going to be able to stem the tide on these shrimp diseases?
I think so far we have, and Hawaii has a very nice program of, which is administered by the State Department of Agriculture. They have an aquatic veterinarian that's kind of overseeing this industry, and she provides the certification documents for all of the broodstock exports. And as long as we do a good job with the biosecurity and follow good protocol, then this industry will continue. And like I said, I believe there's room for significant growth. And I would even suggest that maybe some other industries should be looking at this. Obviously in the plant agriculture industry, the seed business, it's Hawaii's #1 ag industry now, the biotech thing. Now in shrimp, we're not doing any biotech, it's just traditional.
The shrimp you're working with are not GMO.
Not GMO. But in agriculture, the big companies, the Monsantos and the DeKalb Genetics and so forth, are working with GMOs, but there's a whole nother sector of breeding activity that can be done in Hawaii to supply the world with germplasm. And I think that the shrimp breeding business and the ag biotech industry are models for where Hawaii can produce a very high value product and exploit our isolation and sell it to the world.
Yeah.
And not be so concerned about food production. I mean, I'm all for Hawaii being a food producing platform for our people, but in terms of making business, I think the breeding industry has a lot more upside to it because of the high value per piece.
High leverage, yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing you mentioned early in the program I'd like to pick up on is, you said your training was in various different things, not necessarily in shrimp. And
Yes.
you learned from your training and you applied those
Right.
lessons to shrimp, and that's what made you what you are today in terms of a breeding technologist. So now you know a lot about shrimp. Is there
Yes.
any other animal, any other sea animal that we could take these lessons to now and make yet another crop, another broodstock type of crop, and sell that to the world as first class, pathogen free in the same way?
Good question.
I absolutely think there is. There's several large aquaculture industries around the world that are based on broodstock suppliers feeding into those industries. Tilapia is one of the fastest growing industries on the planet. And I believe that a Hawaii-based breeding company for tilapia would have a very interesting posture to the world, and they could mimic what we did or copy what we did in the shrimp breeding and certify them to be pathogen-free, a very big issue, and then apply, in Hawaii, we've got a lot of expertise in breeding and molecular genetics and all that stuff. So I'm more inclined towards these knowledge-intensive industries for Hawaii as opposed to, vegetables, farming, and stuff like that. I'm not opposed to that, but I think that in terms of technology and investment opportunity and creating good jobs, these industries where it's really knowledge intensive, like breeding, have a better potential for Hawaii.
Sure,
Because
huge leverage.
Yes.
And it's technology. You are effectively selling technology
Exactly.
to the world. It's almost like the tech industry that 10 years we wished we had, and
Right.
now it's kind of coming true through this environmental science that you're doing. And gee, the more we do of it, the better. We develop a reputation worldwide, and we have high leverage crops, much higher leverage than just merely producing the food. We become a technology center for food. And that would be a dream come true, wouldn't it?
For all varieties of food and ornamentals. And one of the ways I look at the shrimp broodstock industry is really what we were selling. We were selling shrimp DNA. Okay.
Yes.
So in essence, we were like an information business.
Yes.
If you think of it that way, we're selling the genetic program to make 1 million babies per pair. So that's what we were doing. We were selling shrimp DNA. And I think that model has tremendous potential here in Hawaii if we can strategize, target specific industries where we could play a role. You know, Hawaii's got year-round growing season, tropical, semi-tropical, you know, those kinds of things. So I really advocate more along the lines of these knowledge-intensive activities.
Sure, and that's what brings the payload home.
Right.
On the other hand, you know, listening to you, talking to you today, I can only think of one thing, and that is how much horseradish I would like to have in my cocktail sauce. That's what I've been thinking about through this entire show. But what about you, Liz? Why don't you close and summarize and present your view and your reaction to Jim Wyban?
Well, I want to thank Jim for being here with us. Jim is the pioneer of shrimp broodstock industry in Hawaii. Last year, our total aquaculture production value is about $58 million. And Jim said shrimp broodstock the product sold for $20 million. It's very significant. The other big segment is algae. So certainly we hope people will take advantage of Hawaii's location and the technology centers in Hawaii, UHOI, to go into this kind of business and be competitive and provide more high-quality SPF shrimp broodstock to worldwide farmers. It is a big potential for people here. So as a worker for the state, I appreciate Jim's pioneer work over the years to help the state build this high reputation for our quality shrimp. So thank you, Jim, for that.
Well, Jim, looks like you got friends in high places. That's Liz Shue summarizing, and Jim Wyban and Hilo joining us by Skype. He's a shrimp breeding technologist, and we've been talking about Hawaii shrimp breeding and its industry here in the islands, here in agritech in the islands. And I've been thinking about cocktail sauce and oyster crackers myself, but that's another time. Thank you so much, Jim. It's been great to talk with you. Carry on. Don't stop for a minute.
Thank you so much.
Aloha.
Yeah, aloha. Thank you.